I'm not going to. All right, let's see. Okay, hopefully everybody sees Scrum Masters of the Universe with 3 very happy Scrum Masters placed there on the screen. So welcome everybody. Thank you very much for attending. We just have a few minutes. I want to go over a few things before we get into our guest speaker. All right. Okay, let's see. So Scrum Masters of the Universe, our mission, we're not just a group of Scrum Masters. So if you're not a Scrum Master and you're here, please don't leave. Stay with us. We really, it's just a nice name that we came up with. We really cater to any Agile practitioner, right? So our goal is to provide a place for Agile enthusiasts to learn, grow, and flourish in applying Agile in the world of work, maybe even in your personal life as well. We believe there's great value in getting out of our silos and connecting with others who are passionate about growing as Agile practitioners. So that's a little bit about us and our mission. The leadership team, our fearless leader, Jamie Kriegel, is listed here. Quite a few people are here because of a direct invite from Jamie. She wasn't able to make it today, but yeah, she is very much our senior leader and our founder for our group. You see me and Katrin listed there, and Katrin will put, if you want to connect with us, she'll put our LinkedIn profiles in the chat. Want to connect with us? We've got several ways. We've got LinkedIn, we've got Facebook. Obviously, you know about our meetup if you're here. We have YouTube, don't have TikTok yet. Rose, I think you're a TikTok person. Maybe you can help us get started with that. But would love to have you join us in all those various ways. All right, we're starting to come down to the end of the year. So we're going to start slowing down with events, but we do have a November event that's scheduled for November 3rd. Murray Robinson is going to be talking to us about Agile 2, the next iteration of Agile. And so that's looking like it's going to be extremely challenging and interesting, thinking about where Agile should be going. I will note that Murray is located in Melbourne, Australia. So we have a different time for that. And so you'll notice it's 10 a.m. Melbourne, which translates to 7 p.m. Eastern time. You can translate that to whatever time zone that you're in, but for here in the States, it's going to be a nighttime. It'd be interesting to see what kind of a turnout we have for that at a different time. So join up for Agile 2 with Murray on November 3rd. Always want to thank our sponsors, Agile Alliance, Agile.ai, and Scrum.org. Thank you to those so much. They help give us resources that we can be able to have this group. So without them, this wouldn't be possible. Thank you so much to them. All right, and the real reason why you're here, the star of the show, Rose Geelen. She's going to talk to us about nonverbal communication in Scrum. So Rose is very interesting. She's got a background in theater as well as an Agile practitioner. So she's going to share some secrets with us that you might not know that you can take back to your teams and use to improve yourself as well as your Scrum teams. All right. So without further ado, Rose Geelen, you have the floor. Thank you so much for having us. Join me in a round of applause. Thanks.
Thank you so much. It is actually a pleasure to travel all the way from here to America. I'm currently in the Netherlands. It's 4 o'clock here. So I had an entire working day already, and I'm very much looking forward to share this afternoon with you, morning for you probably. And I would like to ask you to not only participate in the chat, but I always love to see some faces. So feel free to turn on your camera and be part of this show by participating as well as you can in the situation that you're in. For our focus, it would be really helpful if the microphones of everybody else should be turned off. Of course, if you have a question, don't hesitate to ask in between, but to make sure that we keep our focus, that it really helps if we have our microphones turned off. I'm gonna now share my screen with you. As Mark already mentioned, I have a background in theater. I've been an actress, director, but I was really interested in Scrum, and I started doing nonverbal training with IT companies, and that's how I ended up here. But my techniques and theory comes from acting techniques. I mainly use, for the ones that have some interest in acting, Meissner and Chabak acting technique. And today we're going to talk about how to use nonverbal communication, mainly in an online setting. Sometimes I will refer back and forward to what it is, the difference between online and on-site. But most of the time we're going to talk about what it is you can do to make sure that you keep your meetings as interactive and as interesting as possible. And for that, I want to ask you first in the chat to answer this question that you see here. So what do you think about when you think about nonverbal behaviors? What is nonverbal behavior according to you? If you could answer that in the chat, please. And then Mark, can I ask you, once some answers come in, to share some of the answers that you see?
Sure thing. They are coming fast and furious here. So I see body language, I see our actions, I see facial expressions. That's a bulk of them here. Tone of voice, gestures, any eye contact. Ooh, vibe.
Oh, nice. Yes, definitely. That's also part of nonverbal communication. And something I want to refer to later on. I usually say energy, but vibe works as well. Thank you, Mark. So when we talk about nonverbal behavior, we talk about the expression that we show in our face, the body language that we use, meaning posture, but also gestures and actions. We talk about voice expression, especially important when you have a team or work with a group of people that don't want to turn on their camera. There's still a lot to read and listen to and hear from the way somebody uses their voice. It gives away a lot of the non-verbal cues, so that's also a good one to focus on. And then I personally always like to add clothing and also space to non-verbal communication, not because you non-verbally communicate with clothing and space, but it contributes to how you are perceived as a person. So if we talk about space, for example, and we put it in an online context, using a background, using your own room, says something about you as a person, about your personality, your background, your character. But it also very much depends on how your energy is. So let's say that you're in a damp and dark room, then that means your energy is going to be lower. Whilst if you have an open and light space, you have more space to be creative, to think, and your energy will be up. Especially given the current circumstances and the remote working, that differs so much from person to person, and that's something to really take into account when communicating with someone. Can I ask currently, by a raise of hand or maybe a shout out in the chat, who is working from home at the moment?
I am.
I hear some shout out. I see some hands getting up. Yes, most of us are currently working from home, and that means we work in a different environment than that we're used to. And in that regards, having a certain space in your house where you go into work mode can really help. And that can be a table or even a chair. But making a difference between when I'm working and when I'm at home and relaxing it really helps if you, yeah, I mean, the best thing you can have is an office, but not all of us can have that, unfortunately. So then creating a workspace and creating a relaxing space for yourself is really helpful. So that's something that you could definitely work on and structure your work around. What is important and when nonverbal communication is important is every time you communicate with someone, whether that is online, whether that is over the phone, whether that is in real life, does not matter. On one-on-one conversations, in meetings such as daily Scrum, retro, perspectives, or Scrum planning events, in presentations, for example, during your Scrum review, or when you're moderating a setting, like, for example, Mark and Catherine are doing right now, their nonverbal communication, but also your nonverbal communication is important for them, because that matters in the way they facilitate you during the session. What I'm gonna do with you today is I'm gonna go through all these important things, meetings that you see here. So one-on-one conversations, meetings, presentations, and moderation. With those events, I'm gonna give you some insight and some focus points that you can use in online communication. Obviously, you can use them cross meetings, but for certain events, it's easier to focus on, for example, expression. And in other events, it's easier to focus on body language. And that's how I structured it for you. We're going to start with one-on-one conversations. And here we're going to focus on expression. And as you can see, I'm trying to keep you really active. So in the chat, can you please answer what expression you see with number 1, 2, or 3? And if you want, you can just answer one, but if you want, you can also answer all of them, just for me to get an idea on how well you can read this macro expression that you currently see on your screen. I already see some answers coming in. See happy for number 1 a lot coming by. 2, defensive, disgruntled, grumpy. And 3, I see shocked or surprised. Yeah, or irritated for number 2. That's good. Yeah, it's fun. You know, every time I ask this question to an English-speaking crowd, the way they can describe emotions with words vary so much compared to the Dutch language. In the Dutch language, for number 3, for example, we just have the word surprised. But here you have shocked or amazed, or lots of ways to describe your feelings, much more than we have in the Dutch language. So that's always a pleasure to see that there is so much variety in the way you speak the languages. And it's true what I see here. So for 1, you see happiness, which is recognizable, the smile and what we call the crow pause. Number 2 is disgust, which you can really recognize in the way there's tension on the mouth and tension around the nose. And for number 3, you see surprise or shock. You can see that in the raised eyebrows and the mouth that is slightly open. So these are macro expressions, expressions that are easily recognizable, and they're quite big. So they last for a longer period of time. They usually have some sort of buildup. And if you see this, you know how that person is feeling. However, these emotions can be faked or can be manipulated. You as a person can pretend to smile. Often people who pretend to smile don't use like their eyes, but still you can trick yourself in showing happiness without actually feeling happiness. Same for disgust and surprise and all other emotions. You have another set of emotions called micro expressions or micro emotions, which you cannot fake, which are therefore always reliable, and they're universal, meaning that you all the way in America, from Australia to here in the Netherlands, but even people from primitive tribes use the same emotions and the same way of expressing their micro expressions. So they're universal and they're in our nature. They are our coping mechanism. And because they're always real emotions, they're a great way to fact check and see how everyone in your team is feeling. When it comes to big groups, it's really difficult to read micro expressions because you have such small pictures. But with one-on-one conversations or groups of 3, maybe even 4, micro expressions give you very valuable information. What I've done for you is I've recorded some videos that show those emotions. Of course, those emotions are acted and therefore are way slower than they are in real life, but they give you a good way of learning how to recognize micro expressions. So in a minute, I'm going to show you a few videos, but before I'm going to do that, I'm quickly going to go over the 7 universal micro expressions, which are surprise. You already saw a picture of surprise. The focus is on the mouth and the raised eyebrows. You have disgust, which focuses on the tension of the mouth and the wrinkling of the nose, like you smell something that's dirty. Your sports socks or food you left in the fridge for too long. That is the resemblance of the micro expression disgust. Quite easy to recognize. And my advice is to really focus on the nose, because that really distinguishes this emotion from all other emotions. You have sadness, and sadness is a very difficult micro expression to read because it's very minimal. But the best way to recognize it is that there is a brief unfocus of the eyes. Now, in an online setting, that's difficult because somebody might be reading an email and that's why they're unfocused, or might not look into the camera. So that's why sadness as a micro expression is really difficult to actually recognize. Then happiness, really look for those crow paws. If those are not there, then it's not a micro expression, and then it could be faked. So that in the combination with the smile is very important. And anger is tension on the mouth and the eyebrows that really knit together. Fear looks a little bit like surprise, but the biggest difference is the tension that you see in the eyebrows and under the eyes. So there's still an open mouth, but the tension in the eyes changes, because if we squint our eyes, we are much more focused. And when we're afraid, we get into that focus mode. And then the last one, that's contempt. And contempt is a half smile. So somebody pulls one side of their lips in a curl. And I find this quite a rough emotion to see. What's good to know is that obviously these are very brief moments that you see with someone. And the things that you see here are the cores of the emotion. So if somebody shows anger, that does not mean that they're completely outraged. I see a question. Is that you, Mark?
Yeah, if you don't mind me asking a question.
No, go ahead.
So I'm interested in the contempt with the half smile.
Yes.
So there's a fairly famous actress that I think about with this here in the States called Drew Barrymore. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her or not, but she very frequently does a half smile, and that's just part of her personality. So I wouldn't call that contempt by her look, but how would you characterize that?
Well, I think it's quite a bit of a seductive smile, maybe a little bit in that direction. Though what she does is a macro expression, so it's a bigger expression than just micro expression, which is very brief. In that half smile, there might be some version of contempt, as in contempt, I'm better than you. And that is a version of contempt. So I don't have a picture of Drew Barrymore right in front of me doing that. So I can't say for sure whether what she does is either a way of saying, hey, this is me and I'm happy to be me, or is it, oh, I'm better than you, I can't tell you. But it's quite possible that there is some layer of contempt in there. Though it is uncertain whether she actually acts that, or when she, or where, if she really feels that, because it's not the micro expression that you see, but it's the bigger expression. Good question though.
That's very interesting. Thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I think that really relates to the fact that when you look at micro expressions, you really see the purest form of the emotion and not per se the level of the emotion. So when seeing contempt, somebody could just be in the sense of Drew Barrymore, let's keep her as an example. It's like, oh, I'm very content with who I am and I look down on you a little bit. But that's so, you know, that's so much smaller than somebody saying, I'm so much better than you, and what are you saying? Really ridiculous. And I place myself way up here and you're down there. That's very different. And it's the same with anger. And micro expression anger is usually a disagreement, or somebody who has like a flash of anger and never the full blown go through anger, because that will always look as the macro expression and it can't be stopped anymore. What I want you to do, if you can, and if you're able to, I want you to try to get up, find something blue and find something yellow, and then turn on your camera. I will give you about 3 minutes to find something yellow and something blue and turn on your camera. If you can't, because of the circumstance that you're in, please then use the chat. So then you can type either blue or yellow in the chat. But if you're capable, please go find something blue and something yellow. It can be anything from a pen to a painting. This is not yellow. I have, yeah, this is also, you know, you can point at the yellow at something blue and something yellow would be great. And if you then can turn on your camera, and I see some more of you have done that, because I want to make this a bit of an interactive session. Mark, because I'm playing the videos, it would be really helpful to see if you can see what you see in the chat and what you see in the videos as what the majority is doing. Is that possible for you?
Absolutely. Yep. Nothing in the chat yet.
No, nothing in the chat yet, because they don't know what to do. So okay. This is what's going to happen. I am gonna play a video of a micro expression. Remember, it's much slower than it is in real life. And I want you to, based on what you think you see, either raise something blue for fear or something yellow for anger. So you make a choice based on what you think you see. And then later I will explain what micro expression it actually is. You ready? Good, let's go. And I'll play it a few times, so don't worry if you don't catch it the first time. And then you can make the decision whether you think this is fear or this is anger. And either enter it in the chat or raise your item in the air.
All right, we see anger, anger, anger. Lots of angry people, Rose.
Well, they're right.
They're Lots of yellow objects.
Angry. It is indeed the micro expression anger. And as I just already told you, This is so, it's just the eyebrows. I'll play it for you again, that you see knitting together very briefly. And normally when we see anger, we don't see it in this form, because anger is something that kind of like boils up and can't be stopped until it kind of like gets out. And then it has a cool down time again. Hopefully sometimes you can stop people before that, but anger is usually emotion that we see in buckets rather than just the tiny expression. So when you see this, you think, well, that's somebody just not understanding me, or somebody that might be in disagreement with me. And that's correct. But in the micro expression anger, it is just the eyebrows and it's a flash. So, it's not that someone is outraged with you. It's someone that just at that moment reacts primarily to what you are saying or what someone is doing with that emotion, anger. And still feel free to ask me any questions about this. So if it's not clear or you don't understand, just speak or raise your hand. I'll try my best to make sure that I see and catch everything, because I like to have an interactive session. That's fine.
Rose, can I ask something, please?
Yeah.
You mentioned I find it quite difficult to read those expressions, particularly the micro ones. If you're facilitating a session, even with a small group of people, if you don't know those people very well, it is hard to try and interpret their emotion. And the one about anger, I see people quite often frowning when you're in a new team or you are talking about a new topic or some complex problems. Is that anger, or is it like confusion and they're like sort of perplexed about something? It's difficult to read the signs.
It is, because especially in a new environment, you're not yet used to the way that people behave. But the fun thing about micro expressions is that if you really truly look at only the micro expression signals, they will always truthfully tell you what emotion that person is feeling. And it's quite often that when people enter a new group and learn about a lot of things, there might be perplexed. But in that level of being perplexed, there is a level of, oh, I don't agree with that, or what is she saying, or I didn't expect that to happen. And those are those snippets of anger seeping, or is it seeping through? You understand what I'm saying? My English is not that perfect, but and in that sense, when somebody shows that signal over and over and over again, it might be good to check in with them. How are they feeling about the situation? Are they comfortable? Do they need any support? So even though you can definitely read the micro expression, you cannot connect what the meaning is behind it and why they show it to you. So a micro expression isn't a conversation starter, and especially if you see it appear more often, it's a signal for you as a Scrum Master or any role that you have to say, hey, I want to have a conversation and see how I can help this person further along. Does that answer your question?
Thank you. It sounds like it's a learned skill as well, though, so it's something that you evolve over time.
Exactly. Yes. What we're doing today is making a start with these micro expressions. And the fun thing is we all read micro expressions all the time, constantly. Yeah, we process that information, but there is so much information to process that we do not process it consciously. And by doing a micro expression training, you will teach yourself and you will learn how to register those micro expressions consciously, so you can actually do something with it. So it's a skill we already all have. We just have to make ourselves aware of it. And we made a start with that today. That is, one more time. I'm going to continue with the next one. It's the same principle. So it's either blue or it's yellow. It's up to you. I'll play the video a few times, so you have some time to actually look at what's happening. And remember, it's just a tiny, tiny adjustment in the face. So you can, you might miss it the first time, but don't worry, you will see it eventually. And I'll play it a few times for you. And then when you're ready, you can rate your item or answer in the chat.
Sense a lot of disgust, Rose.
Good. And that is correct. This is disgust that we're seeing here. And as I told you before, disgust is actually an emotion that's really easy to recognize.
Sorry, hold on first. This issue, we don't have acceptance criteria, right?
Sorry, excuse me?
So if we don't have that, I would tell you to stop. Let me speak to the BA. We need an acceptance criteria.
Mark, did you get what he was saying? I find it really hard to hear.
I think it was a separate conversation. I muted them, Rose.
Okay, perfect. I was like, oh, what's this? Disgust is an easy recognizable emotion because it's the only emotion that involves so well around the muscles near the nose. And it actually looks like somebody's smelling something disgusting. And disgust often happens not only in a conversation when someone's saying something where people really disagree or think, oh, what's that person saying now? But it also really happens towards a person. So let's say you have a team of 10, and the group dynamics don't really work that well. You sometimes have that one person that draws quite a lot of attention to himself or herself by constantly speaking, by speaking before his or her turn, by interrupting when it's not necessary to interrupt, yada, yada, yada. You sometimes have that person in your team that draws quite a lot of negative attention. What you will see, what will happen if that person over and over again starts speaking, is that somebody or people in the group start showing this micro expression towards that person. So they will start showing disgust. And this is the fun part, or this is the trick. So it's not only you should focus on the person that's speaking, there's actually quite a lot of information in the people that are not speaking, because they are the one giving that reaction. And when you see that happening, and you see that happening over and over again within multiple people, you know there's something that you need to do with your group dynamics. You have to smooth it out. You have to talk it over. You have to talk about how do we actually behave as a group, because otherwise that small disgust that you see is going to turn into a big conflict. And we all know that, especially, remember from high school, that one student that they always ask, oh, is there homework that we need to do? Well, you thought the teacher was going to forget that homework and that you can just go off and have a lovely afternoon. Students will react to that student with showing the micro expression disgust. You all have that picture in your head. Unfortunately, that happens in the workspace as well. And that's not per se the problem from the person that is the instigator. It's the problem of the group, because the group will start dysfunctioning if that happens. So you have to find a way to smooth that out and work that out together. Does anyone have any questions about the emotion or the micro expression disgust? Great. Then I'm going to move on. I have one last micro expression for you. I think it's a fairly easy one, but let's see. Is it happiness that we see here, or is it surprise?
So this one's a little mixed, Rose. I see some happiness and I see some surprise.
Yes, okay, great. That's good. Then I'll explain what it is and why it's not one thing and it is the other. So what you see here is blue, happiness. And I get the confusion because you have the eyebrows that raise, so that makes it look like it could be surprise, but you definitely do not see the mouth opening. And that's an important indicator when we look at the micro expression surprise. And what you do, but it's very minimal, you see the tension between with the eyes, the crow paws that start, and you see the smile on both sides. So in that sense, you can see that this micro expression is happiness. And with surprise, there is always the open mouth and the wide eyes and the eyebrows that go up. So that's the difference. They're close together because you know you can be happy surprised and surprised happy. But in the truest form, you see happiness here. So now that you got some idea on how to recognize micro expressions, this can definitely help you in recognizing problems within your team, but also conversation starters, and you can check with the micro expressions if everyone is still on board in what's going on in the team and what's going on in your meeting, especially in small teams, because if you're with a group of, for example, 40 people in one room, the pictures are way too small and you can't read the micro expressions anymore. What I do quite a lot in my training is this micro expression training, because the more you do this, the easier it becomes to recognize it. So I also advise you, when you really want to watch this back and do this a few times, so you are sure, okay, I can definitely recognize these three emotions. And you also got the poster that is in the beginning of these micro expression training, which you can always use next to your desk to remind yourself of the 7 micro expressions. So when we talk about meetings and we have a big group of people, then what I often really like to do is engage people in the chat. Well, you've seen me do that right now already. It's because it is a different form of concentration. Yeah, you're listening to me, you can watch me, you type something in the chat, I ask you to erase stuff and actually get up and find something blue and from something yellow. That makes sure that you differ in focus, which makes it much more easy for you to stay focused to what I'm saying and to stay with us in the meeting. What I often also like to do is work with emojis and GIFs, but there's something tricky with emotions. So my first question for you, what do you think these emojis mean? You can answer all of them, you can answer just one. In the chat or real life, if you want, just shout out, what emojis do you think you see currently here? And it would be helpful to put the number with the meaning.
So I see 1 is being excited, 2 being caring or a hug, 3 is pick me. That was interesting. Let's see, I see let's go through these. So for 1, awesome, zing, you're a star, surprise, agreement. For number 2, I see hugs, right on, awesome, welcome, happiness. Let's see, hug. And then for 3 rows, I see my perspective. I see indifferent, okay with a question mark, whatever, or unsure, and how can I help?
Cool, thank you. It's fun to already see that within this group, there is plenty of people who interpret these emotions in a different way. Now, there's people who spend quite some time making these emojis and giving meaning to them. And I'm not saying that you cannot use them in any other context, but I do want to quickly go over what these emojis actually mean according to their maker. For one, it's often used as a shooting star, a zing, or it's going amazing, or well done, or let's go. But the meaning, or the official meaning of this emoji, is to show that you're dizzy. I've never seen anybody actually use this as a dizziness emoji, but that was the intent of the maker. This number 2, I saw quite a lot in the chat, so that's nice. This emoji, obviously, as you can see, has their arms open, ready for a hug. But because it's an emoji, it doesn't have arms in this form, so you can't really see it, but it is a hug. People often use this emoji as jazz, or I don't know what you're talking about, or don't ask me. But that's not how this emotion was intended. It is a hug, but the arms are just hidden. And the last one, which amazed me the first time that I saw it, this one is used to show information desk employee. Apparently, information desk employees sit like this very often. And if they don't know what they're doing, they sit like this. Because you also have this one, right? So, you know, can I help you? And you see that sometimes people use it like that. Can I help you, or what is it? But more often it is like, what are you saying? Or it's used in a more like sassy way. So it is interesting to see that even though we use these emojis as a language to communicate with each other, working cross country or cross community or cross social perspective, they might mean something completely different. In the school where I currently sometimes teach lessons to students, I have one of my co-workers who uses an emoji that I use in a very different context, often as an emoji to show that she's happy. And every time she does it, I'm like, what? This is so out of context. But that's, for her, that's normal. And for me, it's like, that's not work appropriate. So be careful on how you use emojis. And if you use emojis, always use them with context. Of course, there's emojis that are so common and so well known, you can't make anything else out of it. So like the crying emoji, or a happy emoji, or a thumbs up. That's simple. We all understand that. But then there's also this set of emojis that are used in a variety of ways, which can cause confusion in your communication. Whilst they are very nice to enhance the atmosphere or to give meaning to your words, when you can't do that non-verbally in person. So this is a way of non-verbal communication to use when you're writing. But be careful, please.
Hey, I have a question, Rose.
Yeah, go ahead.
Are you familiar with the site Emojipedia?
Yes, I am.
What do you think of it?
It's fun because it gives lots of meanings to the emojis, and you can also see some social context there. It's like what I often do when I hear somebody speak like urban slang. I have to look it up, and that's what you can do with emojis as well. But when we use it from day to day, you can't look up everything to see if it is socially acceptable. So it's a great asset to see how others use that emoji. And especially if you're not sure how somebody uses it, I would use it to try to understand the context. But when you use an emoji yourself, just give context. That makes sure that you don't cause any confusion. Yes, I see an emoji there. Thank you. So what I often also use in the chat, especially in the beginning of a meeting or during a long meeting, is using GIFs. And here you see the way of using GIFs in Microsoft Teams, because I often use that, but I think it's quite similar for Zoom. There is a function, if you go to the chat, to click on the emojis, and I think then it shows you GIFs as well. But maybe Mark, you're more familiar with using GIFs, or no? Or using Zoom, I mean.
Yeah, Zoom, I don't think has integrated unless there's a plugin or an add-in for GIFs.
No, I think you need a plugin. So instead of asking you, oh, sorry, this is not going how I wanted to go. Let me go back. In Teams, and I think all other platforms, you can use GIFs. GIFs are a bit more elaborate than emojis, so that's why I prefer using those. And what I do is I often ask people, okay, so show me an emoji that best fits how you're feeling so far, or at the end of the meeting, show me how you feel about this meeting, or how was your weekend, or something like that. It's just a way to connect, and with the GIFs it's easier, but we can also do it with emojis. So I would like to ask you, whether it's early in the morning or whether you're always done with your working day, how was your day so far? Give me an emoji that best resembles what you're feeling right now, and post that in the chat so we can connect a little bit over that. Now I'm also make sure to do it myself. Emojis are really small, so I have to go close to my working people, glasses, smiling people. Jen is not feeling so well, I see today. Lisa's doing great, I see. So it gives you, as you see, it gives you really a nice overview how everyone's doing in your meeting, and it's so easy to do it, but it's a really nice check-in, and it also is a conversation starter. Because when you see, especially in a more trusted environment and context, that somebody often shares sad emojis or often shares panicking GIFs, that is a cue. Maybe you have to go talk to someone, and it's much more easy to express yourself online with just a picture than when I flat out ask someone in a group of people how they're doing, because then people are hesitant to give an answer. So emojis are a way to check in. GIFs are a way to not only have fun, but also check in how people are feeling about their day, about how they're doing, but also about the meeting that you're currently having. So it's a nice way, and especially if you use Teams, it's actually possible to do it. And for Zoom, you need a plugin, unfortunately. Let's continue. So when we're talking about presentations, one of the most important aspects is your clothing. And that definitely plays a part in how you are perceived. There's a difference, however, between clothing online and clothing offline. Especially when I would give this little workshop for you in person, I would wear something bright, something that sets me out from the crowd, something that draws your attention to me, maybe like a red color or a really vivid green or blue. And that's okay, because I'm presenting and I'm putting myself in the spotlight. But in an online meeting, when I would wear something that bright, such as a very vivid red color, it would definitely distract you from actually listening to my story, because the picture is so small that everything that's really bright really stands out. So in that sense, doing an online workshop, it's much better to use something that is a bit more calm, a bit more relaxing, so you can focus actually on my gestures and my face and not so much on what I'm wearing. And this is for the other person, but it also goes the other way around. If I'm wearing my professional work attire at home, I will feel much more inclined to focus and work on what I actually have to do. And I'm very straightforward because I'm Dutch. And we are quite blunt sometimes and open and honest, and we ask sometimes embarrassing questions because that's in our culture and that's in our nature. So I'm just gonna ask it. Who here ever works on slippers or sweatpants or other things that are actually not really work appropriate, but they're below desk, so it doesn't really matter? Raise your hand. I see quite some people raising their hand. Yeah, and that's it. We all have done it, and I've done it too, on my slippers, in my bathrobe, working. But what happens if I do that? My energy is 10 times more low, and I have so much more trouble focusing. Of course, when you have a meeting that's much more laid back and you can just drink a cup of tea and just listen and sit back, I understand. But what you're also doing, especially when you're working from home, you're mixing up your work attire with your home attire. And that makes letting go of work or not relaxing when you're working much more difficult. So what I often do when I'm done with my working day, when I work from home, I change my outfit. You know, I go from my work attire to my relaxing attire, because I work in the same space as I live and relax. I make a difference by making sure that I wear something different, which helps me switch off my working mode and get into the outside of work mode. So clothing is not only there to show how you are perceived, it also makes you feel a certain way. And therefore, I sometimes even from home wear heels. And nobody sees that, but I feel it. And it makes me stand up more straight, and it makes me more active and makes me feel good about myself. So wear something that helps you to focus and helps you to really be part of that working community that you wish to be part of, because that helps you to actually be in that state of mind, and that helps you to actually communicate that you are working and that you're focused and that you're a professional. Are there any questions about the clothing and what you can best wear online and what you can best wear offline? I still see 2 hands raised, but I don't know whether that's still from my question or if people have a question. Stacy, you have a question?
No, I just need to take my hand down.
Nope, no problem. So the last aspect that I want to discuss with you is moderation. And with that, I mean the people that facilitate a meeting and make sure that everything goes well. In moderation, the main focus is often on the people. When we're in a room, it's quite easy. You can walk around, you can ask people how they're doing, you can have a small chat, but in an online environment, that's much more difficult. Currently, for example, I work with a double screen because I have my PowerPoint right in front of me, and then I have you on my left side. The reason why I have you on the left side is because of the following. What you see here is a traditional stage that they used during the Renaissance times to divide the stage and allow people to understand where the characters were coming from. In the Renaissance, a lot of things were based on rules and conventions. So what they would say is that people who would come from downstage right, so that's left from the audience perspective, would be right, would be good people, would be the heroes, whilst people would come from upstage left, right from the audience perspective, would be the villains, would be the bad people, would be the antagonist, or would be the people that might sneak off on stage. That is the social conventions that they agreed upon at that time to show the best and most beautiful forms of theater. Now, you might wonder, what does this have to do with my online meetings? If you look at the grid, you see it might be familiar. It's quite familiar to the way that we look at a Zoom call or we look at the Teams call. And especially when we don't have a PowerPoint on, we all are in nice little squares or right at the top. I have you on my left side, and there's a reason for that. Unfortunately, I can't see you all at the same time, but when you're on my left side, I can see you the easiest and I can see you the fastest. So when Mark, who is currently visible for me, raises his hand or does something, I immediately catch it. Because if I would place him on my right side and then down, it would be really hard to focus on him and to really catch him. And that comes from the simple reason that we learn to read from left to right. And that means, because we do that so often, that we always scan from left to right. We scan a room from left to right. We scan our screen from left to right. So no matter if you're in a room or in a Teams call, the people that are in the back on the right side are the people that we're not going to see. On screen, it works a little bit different because we look at the top. So the people that are on my right bottom part of the screen are often missed because they're the last person I see. So every time I have a discussion and I want people to raise their hand to talk, and I have someone in my right corner constantly raising their hand, but I also have someone in my left upper corner raising their hand, I am inclined to give that person in my left upper corner the right to speak or the turn to speak, because I simply see that person quicker. Meaning that I have to teach myself when I'm in an online meeting to not only look at that left side, but to make sure that I go around the room and look at everyone and give everyone equal attention. That means that when I'm doing a Zoom call, as I'm currently doing, I'm putting everyone on the left bar, whilst Zoom often puts you on the right side. I have to drag you and put you in a different place because I want to see you there. So that's much more helpful, and I will see much more nonverbal communication cues. So using that, you will make sure that you give everyone the most attention that they all deserve. So please be aware of that. Now, obviously, this goes for Western countries because we learn how to read from left to right. There's also countries who learn how to read from top to bottom or right to left. Fun thing about that is that they see the world actually differently because they've learned how to look at the world differently from right to left, meaning we have an entire different perspective. Might be something to really realize is that how we are raised and how our culture and how our language or how our written work looks and how we read affects the way that we actually perceive the world. And unfortunately, that also means how we perceive our Zoom calls. That in short is what I wanted to give you as the most important tips for online communication. Obviously, there's a lot more, and there is so many things that I would like to tell you, but my time is short, and I can't share everything with you. So, oh yeah, wait, no, that's not true. I have one more thing. Sorry, I forgot about this, because usually I don't include this, but I thought it would be a nice little treat and snack for you. So tell me, what do you prefer, left or right? You can just do that in the chat. I see a lot of right. Yes, totally. And if you would do that with me for a second, whether I see you or not, go from this to this. Or other side, also fine. From this to this. Or this one also works. If I see Mark do this, works as well. What you're doing is you are sending energy to your brain. You're actually sending the focus somewhere. Because if you do this, the focus is gone and goes everywhere. So for me, sitting like this makes it much more difficult to concentrate. And if you see a lot of people in your meeting sitting like this, that means you have to do something. You have to change something. If you see a lot of people sitting in your meeting like this, they're focused, they're ready to listen and ready to participate. So if you ever
Excuse me,
feel,
Rose,
yes,
I don't
go
think
ahead, Lauren.
we're seeing your slide. I don't think, I'm not understanding when you're saying sit like this or this. Are you showing us? And I'm not
Yes, I
seeing
am.
it?
But if you can't see that, thank you for letting me know. What I mean, if you have your fist, your energy is low. But if you put your finger up in the air, you're actually sending energy to your brain. You can actually be much more energetic. So if you see people with their fist hanging, you have to do something about their concentration. But if you see everyone sitting with their finger up, that means they're focused and engaged. And you can actually trick yourself in being focused and engaged by going from that fist to that more active position. And it doesn't really matter if you put it up or if you put like the thinker to the side with like kind of like a sideways L to your face. As long as you send energy somewhere, that will make yourself more active. Hope that helps, Lauren.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Hey,
So that
Rose,
was-
how about fidget tools? Like one of the ones that I use is just a little, see if you can get it, a spinner. So
Yes.
I will do this sometimes to just keep my energy.
Exactly. Yeah, I do that. I do a lot of doodling and making notes to keep myself active. Yeah, so that definitely works. And especially a fidget tool like that. I know a lot of people who use Rubik's cubes, which is nice as long as you don't actually try to solve it, because then you concentrate on that. It's I often think that I can concentrate on multiple things, listening to a Zoom call and answering an email, but I will miss out on one or the other. So if it involves brain, then you miss out on information. Unless you connect the brain to actually making notes, then you increase your take-in of information. But a fidget spinner definitely works because it keeps your body active. Same as keeping breaks to actually stretch and move around. Sometimes you just need that in order to really engage yourself. As you see, there's many tips and tricks and cues that are quite easy to implement. There's also things that are much more difficult. So if you want to learn more about using nonverbal communication in an online setting or during your Scrum work or making sure that you stay agile, then I would really love to help you further. I currently give two sorts of training sessions. One is called Nonverbal Behavior in Scrum, which actually focuses on Scrum events and where we use a lot of situations from Scrum environment. And then alongside with that, I have a training especially for nonverbal communication online. So if you're working online a lot, but you find it difficult to keep your energy, or if you're working with a group and you see that their energy is constantly dropping, that might be a good way for you to support them and to really engage everyone in an online setting again. Because what we often forget is working online is something that we need to really teach ourselves, and there's lots of new skills and new ways of communications that we need to learn in order to be as successful online as we are offline. So if you're interested in that, I would like to offer you a 10% discount. It is valid for 2 weeks. If you use the code that you see in the screen right now, obviously you'll receive the slides. Then you can sign up for a Boost Your Scrum, which is Scrum behavior or online communication training session. And you can use that both for an in-company training or an individual sign-up, that doesn't matter. But if you're interested, I really would like to help you out more and let you learn how to use nonverbal communication, teach you how to recognize micro expressions, help you with keeping your team energetic, and also learning how to do that in an agile way. I'm more than happy to help you out. And today is not over yet, because we have some time to make this session even more interactive. So I'm going to do that with a bit of help of Mark. Floor is open, floor is yours, as you would say in the theater. If you have any questions about the content that we just did, or a situation you currently have at work where you think like, how would you tackle that? Please let me know.
Hi, Rose. If I may start,
Hi.
I have like 2 questions. Sorry, I'll just.
Go ahead.
Now, the first one is like very related to your personal. So how were you able to relate your theatrical, experience with the agile methodology?
Well, when I started to investigate into the agile world, I really saw that there is a lot of similarities. I'm trained as an improv trainer and an improv actor, meaning that I need to be very much on the tip of my toes, always ready to adapt, see what my scene partner is doing, and really connect to them in order to make progress and make a good scene. And those skills are actually the skills and techniques you also need in an agile environment. You need to be on your tip of your toes, able to adapt, able to communicate with your scene partner / your colleagues to make sure that you work well as a team.
Perfect. Thank you. Makes sense. All right. I'll quickly go ahead with the second one. So in the previous times, we were taught that there is a lot of difference between your professional and personal behavior. You need to behave differently when you're in office, you need to behave differently when you're at home. But now with the time, the more and more focus both on the personal and the professional level is on being yourself, be you. So yeah. I would just want to understand from the current perspective that when there is more focus on just being yourself, like no pretending, no faking. So how much professionally should we be, absorbing the emotions of the people and their behavior, which remains relevant to the professional environment?
Yes, well, I truly believe that it's the people who drive a business forward. It is the people that make or break a successful business or company or whatever you want to name it. So what I always say is, even though you have to bring what you've learned in your social environment to your work, you do play different roles and you do put yourself in different perspectives. You're different as a mother than you are as a friend, than you are as a coworker. However, there needs to be a common ground there. So you cannot just lose yourself and act as a perfect employee, because you're human and you have emotions and frustrations, and learning about each other's frustrations and emotions. And if some event happens in someone's life that makes them either really happy or really sad or really angry, that affects their work. So in that sense, you're not there to be a therapist, or you're not there to constantly socialize, because that's what you got your friends, therapist, or family for, but to show interest in each other and to see when someone has an emotion and to give that person time to vent or time to sometimes discuss that, will benefit the company and will benefit your work as a Scrum, because you create an environment where people can trust each other, and where you work as a small family together.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
Rose, I'm interested to hear, you see some of these bad behaviours in these remote meetings where people are losing focus and attention, and you can see that they are disengaged.
Yes.
How do you approach that in a non-violent way that they're going to completely like just leave the room, but you can see that they're doing something that's annoying and it's disrespectful?
Yes, so what you often see is people answering emails, people being on their phones, or I don't know, even leaving the room for moments of times, right? So there is a variety of ways which I think you can tackle that in a non-aggressive way. One of the most simple ones I often use when I see one, maybe even 2, 3 people getting distracted or doing something that they're not supposed to do, is ask if they need a break. Simply, oh, I see that people getting a little bit distracted. I think it might be time to take a 5-minute break. Because I really believe that if you invest in that 5-minute break, then the rest of your meeting is going to be more effective. Or what I already said is take moments, and that really helps you to see who's paying attention or not. Say, okay, guys, let's stretch a little bit. And then if you see everybody stretching, they probably think, oh, that she's paying attention to what we're doing, so I'm going to focus. And then the last thing that I quite often use is ways to engage, like I did with you, with holding something up. And especially if you have a small team, you can expect everyone to do that with the items, or to ask them to click on a poll, or ask them to share something in the chat, because then you bring them back. And what I also do is use energizers or icebreakers, because that brings people back. Yeah, you're welcome.
So real quick follow-up question, Rose. And it comes around to knowing your audience. So when you notice people are distracted, if you have a team, maybe a 5-minute break is appropriate. If you're meeting with a group of executives, there's a fear that if I give these people a 5-minute break, they're never going to come back because they're going to get pulled into something more important. Any insights you've got on as far as knowing your audience and in relation to this?
And what you say is true. So if I have my own team, I can basically say, hey, I see we're losing concentration. Let's take 5, or is there anything else you need? Because we're human and we can do that. If you have executives and you really trying to get something really important across and you see them getting distracted, it's difficult because you don't want to address their behavior, because that's not your position, and you're actually in the position of being the person that wants to grab their attention. So what I often do for those important sessions is making sure that, one, I keep them engaged, because if you don't lose them, you also don't have to solve that problem. And you do that by constantly checking in with them. And this is the thing, and I love it too. I love to talk. So if I ask you, hey, I really would like to talk about this product. Have you seen it before? I just ask you a question. Simple as that. And especially if you see one person getting distracted, ask that person a question. Have you ever seen this before? Is this something you recognize? Is there something that you haven't heard from me yet that you find important to know? But the first thing is important, and that's that you recognize it, because then you can actually do something with it. Oh, I see somebody in the chat asking what I mean by energizer. So I'll jump into that. Is that okay, Mark? I see you not. So nonverbal communication cue. An energizer comes from the theater world, and it is a short exercise that doesn't necessarily have to relate to the context in which you're busy. That keeps your mind of things for a bit, so it regains your focus. It can be a creative exercise, or it can be a simple exercise where you have to do something physical. So a very simple energizer that I'll share with you is what I call object bingo, where I have a card with certain objects on it, horizontal, vertical, diagonal. And I share that with my group. And I say, okay, whoever finds the 4 objects in the horizontal row wins a point. And the first one to win 2 points, I'll send you a bar of chocolate or something like that. And then everyone has to go around their house trying to find the objects. So I often do things like pens, but also photos or letters. And I sometimes put in a challenge and I say child or pet, you know, because then, you know, people are engaged like that. And that takes me 5 minutes of my time. But in those 5 minutes, everyone is just running around, going around in their room, and you know, they regain energy, and it's something fun to do. So that's just one energizer you can really easily use, and I use quite a lot of them. And I see someone saying, Andrea, if somebody is hijacking your meeting, could you elaborate on what you mean by that, Andrea?
So she's on mute. I'll just go ahead. I'll try to interpret. So when you are leading a meeting and you have an agenda, but what if when someone else comes in and wants to have a different agenda and then they start trying to change the conversation and talking over you?
Yeah. So the annoying audience member that knows better, let's go to say. Those are in particularly tricky because they're often not very willing to listen to you. So they sometimes need some force. So asking them why they keep interrupting, or asking them a question that is similar to that often helps. And if they then have a good reason, say, well, I don't agree with what you're saying because I believe so and so on, then you can say, well, okay, it's perfectly fine that you have different beliefs than me, but I've made this program for today, and I would really love for you to book a meeting with me where we can go and discuss this further, so that we can make sure that everyone else can focus on what I've prepared, and then we'll make sure to come back to that. And then if they say no, which they will not do, then you can ask them why they're saying no, and then repeat the same thing, because they will definitely stop at a certain point. But it can be quite tricky, and especially, for example, if you have a Scrum team and you're facilitating and you notice that somebody does that to somebody else, it's also good to interfere there and say, hey, I see this happening. Are you aware of that?
Interesting, like you mentioned earlier, Rose, to see from the other team members when that happens, to check for nonverbal cues of disgust.
Yes. Yeah. And in worst case scenario, depending a little bit on the person, obviously, you can also address that to them at a certain point. You know, if that happens every so often and it can't be stopped, and you see that disgust getting worse and worse and worse, might be good to have a conversation and say, hey, one-on-one, obviously, do you realize that when you do that, this is the reaction from some of your team members? And is that the way you want to be perceived? And if not, is there another way we can make sure that you still feel validated and that you still feel like you can share your part? I don't know if there's any other questions, or if I answered Andrea's question well. I hope so.
That's just, I just want to say, Rose, that's a great solution to that, of following up and just making sure the person is aware of the effect they're having on the team, because many times they probably even aren't aware. I mean, there's times I'm sure that they are aware and they don't care, but if we assume positive intent, they just might not be aware.
Exactly, and that's what I always assume, positive intent. even when we have like when there's like a problem or something's going wrong in the team, and often what I see is that people's like, oh my god, we have this problem and we don't know how to solve it, and there is what should we do, and it's not our solution, but the people that we need to help us we can't reach, and you get into this negative spiral. And what you can also say, how awesome is it that we run into this problem and that we're so privileged to see if we as a team can find a solution or give advice to the people who actually need to make the decision, because we ran into this, we can grow as a team. And that's such a different approach. And the first approach closes your creativity, makes you go into a negative spiral, while the other approach really opens up possibilities. And that's all in nonverbal communication, because the way you communicate.
That's awesome. Well, Rose, I don't see any other questions. We still have 7 minutes left if anybody wants to get a last minute question in, but just want to re-emphasize, so we're going to be sharing this recording afterwards. If people want to rewatch in the slides, are you going to share the slides that we can publish along with this?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And you'll have the details on the promo code for your class as well in that?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. All right, well, I will say that I very much enjoyed this. This was a wealth of information for me that I can put to use as soon as I get done with this meeting here, and can't wait to review. So I plan on putting on my wall that list of micro expressions that you have so that I can refer to them. That's a great point. So Rose, this has been absolutely awesome. I really appreciate your time so much.
You're welcome. It's always a pleasure working with you.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. We're going to put a bow on this one, and this is the end of this session. We'll see you next time. And Rose, again, excellent job. We appreciate it so much.
You're welcome.
All right. Thanks a lot. We'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you, Rose.
Have a great day.
Really great job, Rose.
You're welcome.
Really great job. See a lot of really good, nice comments in the chat if you want to see those as well.
Yeah, I see some. Very nice.
Engagement seemed pretty high, and we really didn't lose any members for the most part over the course of the session. So awesome.
Yeah, really awesome. Yeah, I agree. I check that sometimes, and it was quite solid. So it's really nice.
Katrin puts together some metrics just to look at over time how the attendee totals are. So she'll share that with us afterwards. I'll share that with you too.
That's so nice. And thank you, Ian. I see and Ivo. There's still some people in the chat.
Yeah, thank you, Rose. Really, really good.